We should get some rest.
Clive, where are you?
In here. I never thought a spell could bring me so much joy.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get into our FF16 character review of the main story. I've been dying to do this. Yes, I saw your comments, which were like, oh, you're always kind of like complaining. But I couldn't talk about the story, which is like 90% of the game, and I adored it, so I had to kind of skip it past. One was down to embargo. Squeenix asked us not to talk about the story, and the other one was, you guys were still playing it. So we are going to talk about the things today on the basis that either you have seen the story, you understand it, or you watched a video about it, whatever it might be. We are in full spoiler territory. I'm not holding back anything. And what I want to focus on is the characters that I believe in FF16 were written way above a cut of anything else that was going on in video games. Like, there are close, but some of the things in here are just so well done that I think they deserve a special mention. And I'm probably going to miss out some characters like, how are you not talking about that character? But we'll get to that later. And I also want to talk about what I think is the best character in this game that we'll talk about towards the end, and DLC that I would love to see for Final Fantasy 16. I would be very excited to see. So, I want to start off with the obvious one. In defense, the court is in session. I raise my gavel to the sky in defense of Jill. Okay, we need to talk about Jill and Clive. I was utterly shocked when the storyline was playing out, and obviously we had so many people watching, and people started to really dislike Jill, and it was mind-blowing to me, actually mind-blowing that people were like, oh, because she's so useless, she's such a, she's giving me blue balls, all this kind of stuff. And honestly, my immediate reaction was, are you crazy? This is like one of the best relationships I've ever seen play out in video games. This is fantastic and dwarfs a lot of stories that I've read. It's crazy. So I want to get into this with you. So let's talk about Clive first in order to set up this relationship. Clive is a blunt instrument throughout it all. He's a child soldier. That's what he is. He's a child soldier. He was raised as a failure in his mother's eyes. And yes, we are getting to that mother later. He was raised as a failure. Raised to be the first shield, so he was trained to fight in his teens. He had to look after his brother, who was the promised one, the child, the phoenix. Got to look after Joshua. I'm going to be the first line of defense to defend my brother. Loves his family. And then, of course, it all falls apart. A massive war. His family is murdered. His brother is murdered. And then he is sucked into fighting for the people that did that, branded as a bearer, his cheeks scarred, and his name stripped away from him. This is all pulled from real life things that happen to people, which is what makes it extra horrible. This is what happens. People are ripped from their homes, taken, their names are taken away from them, and they are trained to kill, 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 kill. And Clive has been drenched in blood since the day he could wield a sword, essentially, since that day onwards, all the way until we time skip to him being an adult. And he's on a mission for the people that, like, butchered his family in order to defeat Shiva. And that's where we catch up with where Clive is. And he has known nothing but blood and death for that entire time, and literally just lived on the brink of revenge and guilt for what happened to his family, and to claim revenge on the person that killed his brother. Needless to say, Clive has a lot of baggage, and he is a blunt instrument. He's semi-focused, right? He's not just a wild tractor ramming his way through the farmlands. But his solution-solving skills heavily boil down to him putting a sword through someone's face. That's kind of all he is as a human being, and he has been fueled by this revenge for the entire time. And once he finds that Shiva is actually Jill, there's something that clicks there. There's something that clicks, and he starts to pull back, and then we get Sid involved, and he's freed a little bit from the nightmare lifestyle that he is known for all that time. That's a great setup, right? We understand where this character's coming from and exactly what he's about. But he doesn't know how to deal with any issues. And this is the crux of the Jill-Clive relationship. He doesn't know how to deal with children. We see that quite easily in a side quest where he has to deal with the children of the hideaway, doesn't know how to do it. All he knows is murder and death. That's how he solves all his problems. He doesn't know how to politic. He doesn't understand the reaction of people. When we time skip for the second time and we are at war with Hugo, what we see is that he is going in and killing people that are hurting bearers. And the bearers ask him to stop, and he just doesn't understand. It's like the bearers are trying to tell him, it's like, you coming here and killing these like 7 guards or whatever just means that Hugo's going to punish us more. You're not here all the time. It's fine for you who can wield the power of icons and murder everything in your path, but you're not always here. And what happens is Hugo says, oh, 5 of the bearers got free and they got to the hideaway. We'll punish 20,000 more or 50,000 more. And every time you do this, Clive, we're just getting more and more brutalized and hurt. And it's actually better for us to stick with the lower grade beatings than the higher grade beatings we get because of what you deal with. But that's how Clive deals with his problems. He fights, he murders, and he goes into it. And then we get Jill. Jill is in a similar situation. Jill was taken as well, like raised as a lovely sibling of Clive, right? I mean, they're essentially brother and sister, although not biologically, in the Rosaria. And then she's taken from her family and she's put with the Iron Kingdom. And the Iron Kingdom believes magic is a sin. They detest magic in all forms, and they brutalize Jill to do their bidding. They don't treat her as a deity like the other people do with their icons. Like Hugo is raised to the High Council. The Phoenix is cared for and looked after. Barnabas is Odin, his like the leader of his people. Not in the Iron Kingdom. They're the ones who are just literally beating her, tying her hands behind her back, sending her in to murder people and do unspeakable things. Now, cleverly, they let our imagination play with what's happened to Jill. She says, I've done things that no one should ever see because I was forced to do it. I have literally been the dagger in the hand of these people for so long, and I have more blood on my hands than you probably do, Clive. And that's really heavy. So both of these characters have just enormous amounts of guilt, revenge, pain, suffering, and frankly, their hands are red. Their hands are red, and a river of blood flows through the cities because of them. And that's when they meet. That's when they meet up. They've done all these things, and that's when they meet. And there's a really interesting moment where I think is where the audience for this, and I saw a lot of this on Twitter, and I saw a lot of this in articles, of people getting fed up that the romance wasn't happening. Because clearly, Jill and Clive are supposed to be the romantic coupling, and it doesn't happen for a very long time in the game. And people were confused by this. And I'm not surprised, because classically, Final Fantasy has not handled this stuff, what I would say, well. Right? I haven't played all of them, and we're going to do that before the end of 2024, but they've been really sort of gross and childlike. And if we look back to some of the games, like Final Fantasy IX, for example, where we've got Dagger, who doesn't know what a dagger is, and she's so simple, and she's a princess and all that, and you have, like arse sniffing going on. We can even go back as Final Fantasy IV with Edward, who is seemingly roaming his castle as the king and having sex with every woman possible. And all the women keep bringing up that Edward is constantly in their faces about it. All the time. Or we have some characters that are just overtly sexual. You know, we can look at Yuna and we can say booba and things like that, but Yuna in 10, who just kind of rocks out with her boobs out and a moogle, and it's like, yeah, booba, everyone, you know, guys like booba. That's the way it's going to be. But romantically, they're really sort of like childlike, and Final Fantasy VIII is really guilty of this in a way that a real relationship doesn't happen. Right? And I always joked while playing those games, long before 16, is that I think these games are responsible for some of the cringe lords we see today, because maybe these people thought this is how a real relationship works. And it's, to me, and I will say this, typically speaking in video games, when it comes to romance, I'm not really this, I'm not trying to say I'm unique or anything, but a lot of the potential romances don't appeal to me at all. When I think about The Witcher, I do not find Yennefer remotely interesting romantically. She's manipulative, she's abusive to Geralt, she teases him constantly. And like, I would not have any interest in a lady that would play these kinds of games. Like, fair play to Geralt, he loves her, and same with Triss. They all want something from Geralt. They're all there because they need something and they want him to do stuff. And I'm like, I'm not into it. In Mass Effect, it was similar. Mass Effect and all those kind of things. Even Saints Row. I had probably had sex with half the characters in Saints Row just because you can, because it's kind of funny. But if I was to think, or when people come into my chat and they're like, hey, who do you think's better, Tifa or Aerith? I'm like, neither, really. In the remake, Tifa was a decent character, but Aerith, I don't see it. And people get really genuinely upset with me, as I imagine some people are right now, is that Aerith is, like, bizarrely naive, considering the conditions she grows up in. And, yeah, she just says things that just drive me crazy. So, from that, I do have that aspect of it. But at the same time, when this relationship played out with Jill and Clive, I got the total opposite. So, there's a moment when we return back to our hometown of Rosaria and we find out Anabella, we'll get to her, has basically butchered everybody, right? And she's just, like, the way the people who used to live in the Duchy of Rosaria under the leadership of the Rosfields are just in absolute turmoil. And it seems like you're going to have a romantic moment because Jill and Clive are sleeping in the same shed. They're both together and they kind of hint at it and then they pull back. And a lot of people are like, God damn it, man. Like, this is just annoying. But my immediate reaction was, no, this is correct.
I said a prayer to Metia, and that prayer was answered.
I assume we're ignoring Dalamud in the sky.
You came back to me. The heavens must have a plan for us.
She has a plan for him.
We should get some rest.
Right.
Clive, man. Oh, fucking time out.
Clive.
This is exactly what would happen with a real relationship. And the reason for that is they're both not free to support each other yet. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but it is absolutely true with the way these characters are written. Clive literally has to kill his own demon. He has to face the fact that he killed his brother, that he can transform into Ifrit, and he's a blunt instrument, so the way he deals with that is he literally kills Ifrit. He fights one-on-one with his own past in order to come to terms with it. And then he's free to pursue his further goals, but he has to let go of all that crap. That's a really adult situation they're in. I have to let go of all this crap before I can remotely give somebody else, another person of a real living person, the attention they deserve. Because otherwise it's just, yeah, there's you, but there's also all this crap that I have to deal with in some way, shape or form. And that's not going to work. Jill is in the same boat, given what she's done in the past to Shiva. And when it comes again to them maybe kissing, Jill's not ready. And again, people were pissed off and they were so angry about the situation. And I'm watching it going, no, this is correct. Jill is not there yet. But this is where it gets really good because they both confront their past. They both deal with it. We do return to the Iron Kingdom and put a sword through the person who made Jill do all those things. And now they're both free. And very shortly after that, they do get together. But it's then not played up in a ridiculous way. It's then played up as when Clive is lost. And Clive is struggling, or Clive has so much on his shoulders, and his only way out he can see is through the sword. It's Jill you go and talk to in those storylines, and if you go and talk to her, like, outside of the story, just go and speak to her. She focuses him up, she guides him, she's his rock, and she supports him even when she's not well, because she knows he needs this in order to get his purpose. So they understand both what their goals are, and they rely on each other. When Jill's feeling down, Clive is the one who supports her, and when Clive needs that focus, because yes, he's the main character, he's the one who can support all this power, it's Jill who's there to say, right, yes, but this is where you need to go. And you know that, and I'm here to tell you you're correct, because you're second-guessing yourself. And honestly, again, not to sound cheesy, this reminded me of my own marriage. And it's so perfect for me as to how this relationship worked out on screen and how it played out. It wasn't just like, let's have a sex scene like we have in a lot of video games, or let's dive into a pond and screw, and let's like do really flirty, cheesy lines, love you, boo-boo, or any of that stuff, or let's call our babe or our waifu or whatever. It wasn't like that. It was an adult grown relationship where they were there to support each other and grow. And I feel this. Like, I sometimes work 17 hours a day, and I have children and I have a family, and it's one of the most requested IRL questions I get is like, how do you balance that? I don't really, because I love what I do. I love it. I'll stream all day and then make YouTube videos all night, every day, every single day. and it's my wife who comes to me and is like, yo, you did really well there, and we need to pull it back a little bit. Or when it's focused, she's like, okay, you get that done. And that's a grown relationship, and I'm there when she needs me. It's like, hey, you need to cancel that and come and help me do this thing. Yeah, I'm on it. You're number one. You're the priority, and we're there to support each other. And that whole thing, that Jill was the rock in this game. And I absolutely adored it. I really did. I think this is a relationship that people should strive for, honestly. Without the bloodshed. You can skip that bit, but, you know, without the bloodshed. Both of them being responsible. I'm not ready for this. You're not ready for this. Let's make it work. It was totally great. Let's move on to Mother Anabella. When it comes to hated characters, we can look at obvious ones in media, and, you know, most people will point to Joffrey from Game of Thrones as like, that is the most despicable character that I have seen in ages. And when you meet a truly despicable character, the hatred that's, if they're done correctly, and they're not just like, oh, well, I killed a load of puppies, so I'm bad, right? That kind of thing. You know, going for the old John Wick play. It's like, oh, you killed the dog, everybody must die now. That kind of play, it makes you hate them so much more if they're done in an almost sinister way. And in a video game, you often can't do anything about it, right? If we had our free way, you know, if it was more of a Skyrim style, we would just go and butcher them immediately. But we can't do that in a single player story most of the time. And so we kind of have to deal with these people. And Mother Anabella is easily one of the most hated people ever. And I think what makes her so extra vicious is that she's not influenced by Ultima. This is all her doing. She is not influenced by Ultima. There's no puppets behind the scenes. We're not looking at like a Sylvanas situation in World of Warcraft where there's, well, yeah, but there's split sides and there's another bit and then we can fix her and all that kind of shit. Absolutely goddamn not. This is, Anabella is just a piece of work, man. A piece of work. Hates her own children for being a failure in her eyes. Raised to get the bloodlines, married her cousin. I don't know if people picked up on this, but the Duke of Rosario is her cousin. But then betrays her own family, lets them all get murdered. Is only sad that Joshua got caught up in it because that's the only thing she wanted because he had the Phoenix. Tried to create the purest bloodlines of all time. Murders, as we find out through the game, murders entire populations. And then goes and makes a deal with Hugo in order to, we'll have peace as long as you kill my own son. All that kind of stuff. And Mother Anabella was used so sparingly throughout the game that, God, I hated this character. She was so well done. So well done. Really was fantastically well done. From the moment you meet her to the moment that she takes her own life, you detest that character. Absolutely detest, because she always wins. That's the problem. She always wins. She's always getting what she wants. Even when she's on the throne of Sombrek and little Olivier sat there, who is, you know, influenced by Ultima. And then you realize towards the end, it's like, nope, this is just her. There was no supernatural force at work, my friends. She is just the absolute worst. And I believe we all cheered with delight when she sliced her own throat, which is the sign of a good villain. Oh.
You cannot stay here, mother.
No way. Absolutely
Take
not.
my hand.
Time out. Time out on this one.
You will not take me, Shadow. You will not take me!
Go on, you wouldn't. Well, there it is. Oh no. Kind of a coward's way out though, but she even stole her own kill. Honestly, it's a sign of going away. She's dead. Thank God. I'm just sad I didn't get to do it, and I wanted to give special mention to that character because I think when somebody evil is done that way, in the subtlest ways, just being slightly cruel to children, like, hey, what's up with that? And to it building, it was a slow burn with Anabella. It's like, oh my God, now she's just ordered the deaths of all these civilians. And right, yeah, she doesn't care. She cares about the pure bloodline. That's all she cares about. You guys are just in the way. You are there to bring her grapes. That is your literal only existence. And if you don't do that, you are less than dirt. Get out of the way. Just die and be done with it. Which then moves us to the exact contrast of that, which was Dion. Dion, Oh, Dion. Dion probably, I think, had the best single story arc over the course of the game. Clive is great, goes through a lot, but Dion's story arc, especially one that isn't super focused on, as he is a side character, the way that character developed into the way it finished was exquisite and painful in all the right ways. Very curious character. So Dion, who you find out very quickly is just the shining star of his people, particularly the armies, but also the civilians. Like, this is their god. This is their prince, and he is as princely as you could possibly be. Like, bred from day one to be fiercely loyal to his people, to a fault, unfortunately. I mean, he is bred as a leader, and his troops would follow him into a meat grinder if he asked them to, because they trust him so much. He will turn into Bahamut and he will defend them to their very deaths. He will not go to war as Bahamut if it's going to risk his own people, but he will do whatever his father commands, whatever the Emperor commands, and just defend his people. He loves his people. He loves them so much that even when Joshua approaches him and tells him, look, Ultima is probably influencing your dad, all the stuff you've been doing recently, like going to war with the Crystal Kingdom, is wrong, and you know it, Dion. We shouldn't be doing this, but it is the will of your leader. The people follow you. They expect you to set the example, and he still sits on the fence like, it gives him his doubts, but he must do, and he turns Joshua down. He's like, we must go forward and do what the command of Sombrek is, because that's who I represent. Those are my people. And then, of course, it all tragically falls apart with Dion. And he's such a kind soul as well. He sends his partner off, knowing he's never going to see him again, in order to take part in things. But it's for the good of the people. Like, yes, I would love to keep you here. It's like sending off your life partner, and go, and sheds a tear, but must suck it up because he's got to be strong for the people at the same time. And then, of course, through manipulation of Ultima in the background, ultimately tries to kill Olivier, knowing that the poison that is spreading through his people is coming from there, and kills his own father. The ultimate betrayal of what the prince and leader of the armies should do. You are the first line of defense. You are the first shield to that man who is not only your leader and but he's your father, and puts his spear through him and breaks.
Dion, you must understand.
Oh, she's not happy.
A small price to pay, is it not? You've been blessed with great power, Dion. Enough to win me the world. So go, claim Valisthea for me, brother.
That's really unfortunate. And then the ultimate betrayal as he goes berserk. I like that. One thing that I thought was really clever with Dion is they establish early on with Benedikta is that if there's too much emotion, too much lack of self-control within an icon or a dominance, those are the people that can control the icons, Ifrit and etc. That they lose control when they hulk out into becoming the actual icon. So when Benedikta turns into Garuda, and she's so emotional, she's so filled with rage, guilt, anguish, whatever it is, that they have literally no control. And they establish that very early in the game with Benedikta, and we see it play out again in its most horrific form with Dion. And Dion loses control because he's killed his father, given everything he's supposed to be, and he has been. He's not pretending. He truly believes these things. Turns into Bahamut and butchers his own people uncontrollably, just in a fit of absolute rage, is just decimating his own people. And when he comes back down, once we take him down after a battle in space, we're actually going to space. We're actually going. We've gone full Fast and Furious.
Ready.
He's betrayed everything he stood for his entire life and believed with absolute conviction. Up until that point, he's not only killed his own father, but he's now killed the own people he was sworn to protect. And he has a death wish. And that suits that character. And when you talk to him, he's melancholy, he is lost, and he hangs out in the hideaway, and he's just, when are we going? That's all he cares about at that point. When are we going? And I am not coming back. And his death was one of the saddest parts. Like when Joshua died, there's not going to be much Joshua in this, but when Joshua died, I was like, yeah, I suppose so. That should happen. But when Dion died, I was like, not only is this absolutely definitely going to happen before we even got like halfway through the story, but it still really affected me. I was like, man, maybe there was still a chance. But in his mind, you know, when a character is written this well, is there is no coming back from the pit that Dion lived in, unfortunately. It was his only escape, the only way to repent his sins. And as he lay and as he's falling back to the ground for his final death, his father, it is done. I have done what I can to atone for my sins by trying to help the world, but also leave it away. So on that sad note, let's get even sadder because it's FF16. The bears and the slaves. Okay. I thought the most interesting way they set this up is as you're a child, when you're child Clive, you walk around and you meet a bearer who's clearly dressed down, and you're not sure of the scenario, especially if you went in blind and didn't understand what was going on. And then you realize you're slavers. You might be kind slavers in terms of the rest of the world, but you're slavers. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Now, this is not uncommon for Final Fantasy's franchise as a whole. Is often the protagonist in some way is a bit of a jerk. 4 starts with you having butchered an entire village to get a crystal. 6 starts with slavery. All these games kind of start with you doing something else. In 7, we're terrorists, right? Although we're generally fighting for a good cause, or we change, we refocus onto the good later on, we generally start in some sort of weird scenario, and then very quickly, we find out we're slavers. And I was like, oh god, wait a minute, do we have slaves? What's happening here? And then the bearer storyline plays out over the course of the game as the main focus of the game, of course, is to free the world of magic, because magic has caused the bearers. If you're not sure what a bearer is somebody who can wield magic without the use of a crystal. So they're naturally gifted with the ability to use magic, and for that, they are immediately enslaved. And this is demonstrated in a number of ways, which generally involves side quests. So this is why some of the side quests were fantastic. In particular, your first visit to Martha is you find a new mother who has just given birth to a child who is magically gifted, and she cares nothing for it, and it's like, do I turn it over to the police? Do I just throw it in the bin? What do I do here? Like, just get it away from me. Like, I can't believe this is happening. And you're like, what the hell, man?
It was a bearer. The boy I carried for 9 long moons.
Oh, no.
A bloody bearer.
Oh, you poor thing. You gave it to the constables then?
Just left it at the garrison. I let them deal with it.
This is so fucking dark.
Couldn't wait to be rid of the blasted thing. Been wanting it gone since the moment I found out.
Well, it's all dealt with now. So no harm done, eh?
Mum, you weren't my brother, was he?
Yes?
No. But you'll have one soon enough. You just have to be patient. All
Jesus
right?
Christ,
Right.
man. This is so dark. This is really dark. But this is the world these people have been trained to go in. And that is actually reiterated later in the side quests. When we go to it actually reminded me very much of Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers here. Remember the meal. When we go there, is that we get a couple of side quests, and one of them is to look for like a toy that's got like a little girl's toy that's got lost somewhere in the fields, and she's been playing with it and she can't find her pet anywhere. She's got a little pet somewhere and can't find it. And ultimately we find it's a human being. It's a bearer who has turned to stone because their ether has run dry and is dead. And we're like, what the hell? This was a person?
Is that someone napping on the job? I hope they don't mind the interruption. The crystal's curse.
Chloe, I was calling you. Didn't you hear me?
What?
Get up now. You've slept long enough. It's time to go home. Chloe? Why did you already turn into a rock? I only made you do a bit of magic. You knew you were my favourite. None of the other Chloes had pretty hair. It could be months before Dad gives me another one. I have to wait until they're too tired to work anymore.
Is that all she was to you? A plaything? Do you really not care that she's dead?
She's not dead. She's a rock.
And you go back, and you're like, this was a person. But the child doesn't understand that. The child has been, and this started a really interesting debate that I'd probably like to see your weigh in, and if you can control yourselves in the YouTube comments, is it the child's fault? Should a child of, say, 6 or 7 years old who has been raised since birth to understand that they look like people, but their parents and society has told them they're not people at all, they're subhuman, less than dirt, and also their usefulness has run out, very similar to a toothbrush that's run out, and you can play with it. So if we compare it to a toothbrush, you can go and scrub the walls of your bathroom with it if you want to. You can use it to pick something off your shoe, but ultimately it's going in the bin after that, and that's what happened. Their ether ran out and they died, but this kid doesn't know any different. The parents are the ones who have taught them this. And I think that's a really interesting debate that a lot of people have. It's like, that kid should know better. How? And then you can clearly see which side of the fence I'm on. Is like, how? How should that kid know better? Where would that kid have picked up the knowledge that this isn't normal? That this isn't what the way things are? This isn't accurate? Like, where does that empathy come from if it's just never existed in the first place? I mean, when they're older and they start reading and seeing slightly different parts of the world, perhaps they go to Rosaria where the bearers are treated with more respect, then maybe they start asking questions. But as a 6 or 7 year old, pretty much whatever you... I have 2 children. Whatever you fill their heads with is kind of what they believe until they start learning and going to school and reading books and things like that. That's what they know. And then, of course, we spot another side quest there where we are told that there is a young boy out in a field that's being attacked by a wolf. Can you please go and help? And when you go out there, you find a bearer who's being attacked by a wolf. And so we kill the wolf, because of course we would. We're defending the human being, only to come back and find out that we've spoiled their game.
No! You weren't supposed to kill Wolfie. You were supposed to die. Father will have you whipped for this. Bearers aren't supposed to win. They never win.
What is this? Your father said you were being attacked.
You're not supposed to talk. Stop looking at me like that. We were only having fun.
Having fun?
Why are you still speaking? Father will hear of this.
How dare you frighten my son? You slaughter his poor pet, and then have the gall to return, head held high.
Still, such attitudes don't always go unpunished.
Father! Father!
Is this your doing?
Of course not. Wolves kill. It's in their nature. Invite one into your home.
That was awesome.
Tear your throat out eventually.
Their game was that they send bearers out, because we have the mark of the bearer, into this field under the guise of protecting a child, and get ravaged and eaten to death by a wolf, and they get to watch, and it's a lot of fun. And that's their game. And those actions were way above what I thought FF16 would deliver. And in fact, most video games would dare to tread with this kind of stuff. And I also liked that they gave more context to this. Why did this happen? Why do these special people, these bearers, end up in this situation? And we do find out later, because it turns out there's a secret society that is keeping certain knowledge from the populace. And their mission, their number one mission, is to seek out documents and texts of the past which describe what actually happened in the past, or at least from one perspective, because the past is always biased when written in a book, right? True facts are very difficult because you weren't there. And we find out that in some ways the bearers caused this situation, because it used to be back in the day, and if you didn't do the side quest, this might be interesting to you. It used to be back in the day that the bearers were considered as not gods, but like above everybody else from birth. They were born into this, almost like royalty. And if you were born as a magic wielder, you were immediately elevated into society to a higher plane. You were given lordship over people. You were given access to things that you wouldn't ordinarily have. And then the bearers who were in power, as most people do, get corrupted by power. and then wanted more and started their own church and things like that, which started to oppress the people who were not born with magic. And ultimately it led to war because these people are like, what the hell? Just because you were born that way, and similar to royal overthrows that have happened in the past against monarchies, that's what happened. And ultimately the decree was set is that bearers will never be allowed to do that again, which ultimately led to the enslavement of anybody who was a magic wielder, because their powers can be used for devastating effect, right? As we see with Clive. Like, it's absolutely possible to do that. It was a little bit of a shame that I think the bearer storyline was established through about the first 30% of the game. A lot of this happens very early, and then it's drifted away from later. I understand that they're like, well, we've established what's going on here. The player understands what's happening with the bearers, so we can kind of put that to the side and focus on the Ultima and the war storyline that's happening elsewhere. But I honestly found that a little bit more intriguing as to how that was going on than the main story, especially because the main story, as fantastic as it is, destroying the crystals didn't seem to solve the blight situation at all. It didn't even seem to slow it down. In fact, things just got worse and worse. But it's Final Fantasy. Near enough every action we take makes the world worse in some way or another. So it's not super surprising. But again, that's the storyline that drifts away later on. I should mention Ultima, I suppose. He is the main villain of the game. I wish they would have called him Omega. If you played Final Fantasy XIV, certainly the recent Omega Protocol Ultimate, then Ultima's physical design was fantastic. Absolutely. I'm going to keep calling him or whatever, but like Ultima is identical across his entire people, described as we. And when we see the other versions of it, his whole people look exactly the same, and they all merge into one. Like, Joshua has a version of Ultima's people trapped inside his chest, but it's not the actual... Ultima is a conglomeration, a hive mind, essentially, of all these old school people that used to be around. But the character design itself was phenomenal, but very, very similar to what we've seen with Omega M, if you've ever done that fight there, and also the way Omega speaks in this hive mind Borg style voice, speaking as many, is what I would describe it as. Was great. But I did like the character arc. It's very typical FF Final Fantasy from what I know of most of the main games. Is a literal god. I mean, it's made abundantly clear through the story that Omega, the reason I'm going to keep calling him Omega, that Ultima did seed this world. Like, life is because of Ultima. I'm going to call him Ultima, but Ultima means the people that came to this world. And the hubris and narcissism of those people is like, oh, well, we created humans so we could inhabit them and flow through them and take on, inhabit their bodies and things like that. But they're basically ants, whatever. And now ultimately they're fighting back against that. And yeah, the literal god of narcissism and ego, ignoring his own creations, then comes back to bite him in the ass. But the actual way the villain was portrayed, I really enjoyed. I liked the sinister subtleness and the patience of someone who is a god. It reminded me a lot of the Ascians, again, from Final Fantasy XIV, who have been dealing with their problems. I'm not spoiling it, but for tens of thousands of years. And, yeah, what's another week? Anna. Oh, yeah, you did that. All right. We've got plenty more time to go. I want to go to Benedikta, though. I want to start talking about DLC. So Benedikta, I want to talk about this. I think this is really important. Women were handled so well in this fucking game. It was crazy. It was something I noticed about 3/4 of the way through. I was like, God, they handled the women in this game so well, especially for a Final Fantasy. I'm not declaring all FFs as misogynist by any means, but typically there's arse sniffing or something going on that is just like so awful in so many ways. And Benedikta, in fact, before that, we get it. It's like Tyre. Tyre is the doctor there, and a kind of side character, has a couple of side quests involving Tyre. But there's no romance there. She's beautiful, but it's not a thing. It's all pure respect. I was like, fantastic. Jill is handled so goddamn well. Karen is handled so very well as this grumpy old lady who literally takes eye for an eye too seriously. Play that side quest.
Out of the way, I can handle this myself. So, wet legs. You remember what you told me when we last met? An eye for an eye. Wise words, Sam. Wise words. And now, it's time to collect.
That took a turn.
It's an easy going through life, one eye short of a pair.
He cut his fucking eye out?
No.
You don't mean it.
But that didn't stop him taking his little revenge.
Alright, let's not bring up anything
took some
odd
of
to
my
Karen
own.
again.
Sorry, lost everything.
Don't mess with Karen. She's gonna come and get you. all the women in the game I thought were handled very well. Super strong. Everything from super strong all the way to weak, same as men. In most castions. Martha, fantastic, amazing character. So love that character. But Benedikta was the only one who used her body for power, and rightfully so, given her character motivation. That's what I liked about it. Is like, yes, this can happen under the right circumstance and context. Yes, this will totally happen. And Benedikta fit that role entirely. And Benedikta is somebody I want to see way more of, because she's kind of the first major boss of the game that you deal with. And Benedikta is so manipulative and so bitter and angry. And I believe, and again, this is why I'd want DLC, it's because of Cid leaving her. They both pledged to leave. They both believed in a better life for bearers and magic users. And ultimately, Cid decided to leave and Benedikta did not. And that betrayal, I think, hurt her more than anything. And that plays out when the two finally do meet under various circumstances in the game. That Benedikta genuinely loved Cid. And that betrayal hurt her so much. And turned her into the bitter, twisted, power-hungry person she became to be. Not in a similar vein to Suyu, but along those lines. And using Hugo and Barnabas just to get what she wants in many scenarios. Hugo in particular. Hugo is not a character I'm going to talk about at length. Hugo is essentially the jock that never loses. You know, given power of Titan, he can literally kill everybody if he wants to, and does on many occasions. But still has that weakness of the woman he loves. She knows that. Even Ultima uses Benedikta against Hugo to manipulate him. And you're manipulating this rhinoceros, essentially, which is what Hugo is. Point him at a wall, and he will go. And he'll get his work done. And he's never lost. That's the type of person who has never lost and just takes what he wants on all times. And has no sympathy for anything that's in his way. And Benedikta was his only weakness. And she knew that. That's why I really liked her, is how she manipulated and used people to get what she wanted. A character like that is great to go along. And I want to see, for the first mention, there's 2 DLCs I want to talk about here, is I would love to see Benedikta and Cid in the past. I would love to know more about that. I think that the mystery of who put her head in a box, which is clearly what it is, was great. I personally think it was Anabella. In order to manipulate Hugo for the later deal, to inspire his rage against Clive by pointing it at Cid, where obviously Cid becomes a title. Clive is Cid. And I think, I personally believe it was Anabella. It could have been Ultima, but I think it was Anabella. But Benedikta's whole story seems so tragic and intriguing, and especially the other moments where she was with Cid and saying goodbye, and Cid leaving the memento on her, I think is a character that is really well done in this world, that is not overly doing sexuality in a major way. Especially if you look at the actual main romance with Jill and Clive, I think this aspect of it was really well done. I want to give some special mentions before I get to the final DLC, because I'm not going to go into detail. One of them is Hugo, obviously. Cid. I'm not going to talk too much about Cid. You might be surprised at that, but Cid's just great. He is the storyline teller. He's not exposition master, but he is the road paver, right? Clive's actions are based on becoming Cid and fulfilling Cid's dream. Okay. The character was done extremely well, but in terms of who Cid is, I would like to see a DLC focused on Cid. Because once we meet Cid, he's already in a position of power. He already knows where he wants to be. He's kind of got things sewn up. And he just makes sure we don't make any mistakes. He basically takes us from this blunt instrument to something more focused, into an actual goal. Jill is the one who gets us there, but it's Cid who points the way and gives us an endpoint. Uncle Byron is the only levity in this entire game. Uncle Byron showing up was like, oh, thank God.
Clive Rosfield died long ago. And for uttering his name here, you shall pay with your tongue.
It is I, Sir Crandall of Camelot.
Oh, it's what I used to do as a kid.
Loyal servant to her serene holiness, Saint Sybil the Unshod.
That's really cool.
Bravo, Uncle. You're still the finest matter in the twins.
Oh, Clive, my dear boy.
What a wonderful scene.
It's really you.
I feel overwhelmed by emotion considering what we've been through.
Scene from the Saint of the Sanctuary.
It is so grimdark. And Byron's here. Yay! We got fun with old Uncle, but he is, of course, there to provide the funding to allow some of the more major things that go on. That's his story arc. Along with Gav. Yeah, Gav is king. Gav is king. One of the best side characters in any video game. Would like to know more about Gav. I don't think he deserves a DLC or anything, but a great companion and a great side character. Shows his weakness very well when he gets drunk, that he's got his own fragility that he can't really show to his best friend Clive because he's Clive's brother. You know, it's kind of a very good, well done guy thing. It's like we don't show weakness to each other unless you really, really have to. It's the way it is, unfortunately. I hope it changes one day, but it is the way it is. You've got to be strong. And only when the barriers come down does that all flood out. And then he's like, oh, God, don't tell anybody I did that. Don't tell anybody I did that. I did not enjoy mid.
That's what she was meant to be. You
Meant to be.
One last chance just in case we needed it. But now she's so close to being finished, I've realized I don't want her to be that.
Yeah, what's up? Now, can you just say, hi, my name is Mid for us?
Hi, my name is what?
Mid.
Hi, my name is Mid.
See, she doesn't sound like that at all. She sounds nothing like that.
Good luck to them, I say. Right, I'm off to get a sling for this elbow.
The voice doesn't match,
Another
but the
work comes in,
personality is my
keep it
wife.
to yourselves, eh?
Yeah, I know. I see it now. I see it now. I'm not going to say any more on that. Fuck Mid. Did not like her. Well, of course, the best character in the game and the one I want to see another DLC for Final Fantasy 16 is Medicine Girl. Easily the best character in the whole game. Medicine Girl is the glue that holds the FF16 world together. She's everywhere. She's saving people. Medicine Girl is forever, right? Thomas is off saving Medicine Girl because she's so crucial and vital at every major event. I would love to see a version of this game, a DLC, from Medicine Girl's POV when all this stuff is happening around her. And it probably feels like that Janitor game, where the whole game is cleaning up after someone like Doom Guy has been through a room and there's blood and guts everywhere and you've just got to mop it up and clean it up. Medicine Girl is constantly shown, oh my God, Bahamut's destroying the world. Now Titan's doing it over here. She's trying to sell her goods. Not working. Everything's burning to the ground. And Medicine Girl just shows up every time and is on point. Medicine Girl was easily the biggest and most fun character that kept popping up. Every time I saw her, I was like, yes. Medicine Girl's still rocking and rolling. Well, that's my main character study here of what I think they did super, super well with an overarching story. I absolutely loved all of this part of the game. I did. I didn't mind that the gameplay is kind of weak during the icon fights because they want you to watch them. They're movie scenes and they're so ridiculous. And the fact you get to engage with them even a little bit, it's fun. I don't think you can lose them. I mean, I'm sure you can if you do intentionally, but they were fantastic. They were really, really good. Like, the whole thing played out well. Joshua, I'm not going to mention too much either. I didn't care much for Joshua. He was kind of just moving the plot along. We knew who he was early on. He sacrificed himself all the time. Compared to everything else that was going on, not that it was bad, but compared to everything else that was going on, I cared way more about these other characters. I cared considerably more about Benedikta and Dion than I did about Joshua. Sorry, Joshua fans, but that's how I felt. And Anabella as well. So that's my thoughts on it. Love to see your thoughts on your favorite characters. Or if you think I've interpreted anything wrong. Obviously, a lot of things in these games are interpreted in certain ways. And I also asked the ultimate question. Not an ultimate question. The answer was pretty clear. Clive's not dead. I don't know why people thought that. There's nothing in there that indicates Clive is dead by any way. He definitely wrote the book at the end. He tiled it under Joshua. They even mentioned that earlier in a storyline that he would leave something to his... I don't know why people kept saying Clive is dead. There's nothing there that indicates he is. He's not dead. There you go. That's my thoughts on it. I'll see you again, guys. Bye-bye.